The acceptance letter was supposed to arrive on March 15th. I'd been checking my email obsessively for weeks, refreshing Harvard's admissions portal every few hours like some kind of digital addiction. But when Professor Chen started talking about quantum physics in my community college chemistry class that Tuesday morning, I had no idea she was about to hand me the key to everything I'd ever dreamed of. What happened next didn't just change my college trajectory, it completely rewired how I understood my power to shape reality itself. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how a girl from Southie who barely graduated high school with a 2.8 GPA made it to Harvard Medical School. Not through connections, not through money my family didn't have, but by discovering something that sounds impossible until you experience it yourself: the law of attraction. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is just another positive thinking success story, let me tell you, what I learned about quantum manifestation in that community college classroom changed everything about how I saw myself, my limitations, and my power to create the impossible. 2 years before that chemistry class, I was working double shifts at a diner in South Boston, trying to figure out how to pay for community college while helping my mom with rent. My dad had left when I was 16. My older brother Tommy was dealing with his own struggles, and the idea of medical school felt as realistic as becoming an astronaut. I'd always been fascinated by science, especially how the human body heals itself. But growing up in our neighborhood, dreams like that felt selfish. College is for rich kids, my mom would say, not to be mean, but because that's what she believed. People like us, we work with our hands. The guidance counselor at South Boston High had been even more direct. Sarah, maybe consider medical assistant programs. Be realistic about your options. So I was. I enrolled at Bunker Hill Community College, taking prerequisites slowly while working to pay for each class. Pre-med felt like a fantasy, but I figured if I could at least get into nursing school, I'd be helping people and making decent money. But sitting in Professor Chen's chemistry class that March morning, everything I thought I knew about realistic was about to get turned upside down. Professor Chen was explaining electron behavior when she said something that made me sit up straight. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed. The act of observation literally collapses the wave function and determines reality. She paused, looking around the room. This isn't just true for electrons. Quantum physicists are discovering that consciousness itself might influence physical reality at the most fundamental level. A kid in the front row raised his hand. So you're saying we can think things into existence? Professor Chen smiled. I'm saying that the universe operates on principles we're only beginning to understand. And some of those principles suggest that our thoughts and intentions might be far more powerful than we've been taught. After class, I approached her desk. Professor Chen, do you really think consciousness can influence reality? She looked at me thoughtfully. Sarah, you're pre-med, right? How badly do you want it? More than anything, I said. But I'm at community college with a terrible high school GPA. Harvard Medical School doesn't exactly recruit from my zip code. What she said next would become the foundation of everything that followed. And it started with a book recommendation that would change my life forever. There's a book I want you to read, Professor Chen said, writing down a title. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist who studies how we can literally rewire our brains to create new realities. That night, I downloaded the book and stayed up until 3 a.m. reading. Dispenza explained how our thoughts create our reality through something called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways based on our thinking patterns. But it went deeper than that. He talked about how we get stuck in what he calls the habit of being yourself, unconsciously repeating the same thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that create the same experiences over and over. If you want to create a new future, he wrote, you have to become someone new in the present moment. I thought about my daily routine. Wake up stressed about money, go to work feeling like I was settling, come home exhausted and watch Netflix to escape. Rinse and repeat. According to Dr. Dispenza, I was unconsciously manifesting more of the same limitations by identifying with them. The next morning, I tried something Dr. Dispenza called elevated emotion visualization. Instead of just hoping to get into medical school, I spent 20 minutes feeling what it would be like to already be there. I imagined walking across Harvard's campus, wearing scrubs in a teaching hospital, the weight of a stethoscope around my neck. But more than the images, I focused on the feelings, the pride, the sense of purpose, the knowledge that I was exactly where I belonged. At first, it felt fake, like I was lying to myself. A girl from Southie at Harvard? Come on. But Professor Chen had mentioned something about vibrational alignment in our next class. Every thought and emotion carries a frequency, she explained. When you align your frequency with what you want to create, you begin attracting experiences that match that vibration. Week 3 of my visualization practice, something shifted. And the first sign that the universe was listening came from the most unexpected place. I was working my usual shift at Murphy's Diner when a customer left behind a magazine. Harvard Medical School was on the cover, some article about their innovative research programs. Normally, I would have thought, what a coincidence. But after reading about synchronicity in another book Professor Chen had recommended, I paid attention. The article mentioned a special admissions track for students with non-traditional backgrounds who showed exceptional promise. There was a contact email for more information. My old self would have thought, that's not for me. But I was practicing something Dr. Dispenza called acting from your future self. So I took a picture of the page and emailed the admissions counselor that night. I know my background is unconventional, I wrote. But I'm passionate about medicine and willing to work harder than anyone else for this opportunity. I didn't expect a response. But 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an email from Dr. Martinez, the admissions counselor. Sarah, I'd like to schedule a call to discuss your interest in our program. That phone call changed everything. Dr. Martinez explained that Harvard was actively seeking students who brought diverse perspectives to medicine. We're not just looking for perfect GPAs, she said. We're looking for people who understand struggle, who can connect with patients from all backgrounds. She encouraged me to apply for their early admission program, which would allow me to start taking advanced courses while finishing my community college degree. But Sarah, she said, you'll need to demonstrate significant improvement in your academic performance. I had 1 semester to prove I could handle Harvard-level coursework. The old Sarah would have been paralyzed by that pressure. But I was learning to use what Abraham Hicks calls the power of intention, focusing on what I wanted rather than what I feared. Every morning, I started with a gratitude practice, not just for what I had, but for what I was becoming. Thank you for my acceptance to Harvard Medical School, I'd say, speaking as if it had already happened. Thank you for the opportunity to serve others through medicine. But the real test of everything I was learning was about to come, and it would either prove that this manifestation stuff was real or shatter my newfound confidence completely. Midway through the semester, I was maintaining a 4.0 GPA but barely sleeping. Working full-time while taking advanced chemistry and organic chemistry was brutal. My manager at the diner was threatening to fire me for being distracted during shifts, and I was running on 4 hours of sleep and pure determination. The breaking point came during my organic chemistry midterm. I'd studied for weeks, but sitting in that classroom, my mind went blank. I could feel my Harvard dreams slipping away as I stared at questions that might as well have been written in another language. Walking out of that exam, I called my mom crying. Maybe everyone was right, I said. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Honey, she said gently, there's no shame in being realistic. That night, I almost gave up. I was ready to email Dr. Martinez and withdraw my application. But then I remembered something Professor Chen had said about quantum entanglement, how particles remain connected regardless of distance, influencing each other instantaneously. Instead of giving up, I decided to try something Neville Goddard wrote about called revision. Instead of replaying my failure on that exam, I spent an hour visualizing myself taking it again, but this time with complete clarity and confidence. I didn't just imagine getting the answers right. I felt the calm certainty of knowing I belonged in that room, taking that test, moving toward my future in medicine. The next morning, Professor Chen pulled me aside. "Sarah, I reviewed your exam. You're going to think this is impossible, but there was an error in the answer key. You actually scored higher than anyone else in the class." I stared at her. "That's not possible. I felt like I bombed it." "Sometimes," she said with a knowing smile, "the universe has a different perspective on our performance than we do." But that exam was just the warm-up for what would become the most powerful demonstration of conscious creation I'd ever experienced. December 15th, Harvard's early admission decision date. I'd submitted my application with a perfect 4.0 from community college, but I knew they were comparing me to students from elite prep schools with perfect SAT scores and research experience I could only dream of. The night before decisions were released, I couldn't sleep. Every doubt I'd ever had about myself came flooding back. Who was I kidding? A girl from Southie with a 2.8 high school GPA didn't belong at Harvard. But then I remembered everything I'd learned about raising your vibration. Instead of spiraling into fear, I did something that felt completely crazy, but also completely right. I got dressed as if I was going to my first day of classes at Harvard Medical School. I put on my nicest clothes, grabbed my laptop, and walked to the Boston Common. Sitting on a bench overlooking the pond, I opened my email and clicked the link to check my admission status. "Congratulations, Sarah. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to Harvard Medical School's early admission program." I read the email 3 times before it sank in. Then I called Professor Chen, my hands shaking. "I got in," I whispered. "I actually got in." "Of course you did," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "You've been living from that reality for months? The universe was just catching up to your conviction." That afternoon, I walked through Harvard's campus for the first time as a student. Everything looked exactly as I'd visualized it. The red brick buildings, the students walking with purpose, the sense of possibilities stretching out in every direction. But the most powerful moment came when I called my mom. "Harvard?" she said, her voice full of disbelief. "My daughter got into Harvard?" "Mom," I said, "I need you to know something. This didn't happen because I got lucky. It happened because I learned to believe in myself the way you've always believed in me." 6 months into my Harvard journey, I understand now that manifestation isn't about wishful thinking or positive affirmations. It's about quantum manifestation, aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with the reality you want to create. Dr. Joe Dispenza was right. We become what we repeatedly think and feel. For years, I'd been unconsciously manifesting limitation by identifying with my circumstances instead of my potential. But when I started visualizing my success, feeling grateful for my opportunities, and taking inspired action toward my goals, I began attracting abundance in ways that still amaze me. The community college girl who was afraid to dream big became the Harvard medical student who mentors other first-generation college students. The transformation wasn't just external, it was a complete spiritual awakening to my power as a conscious creator. But the most beautiful part of this story isn't my acceptance to Harvard. It's what happened when I shared these principles with my family and friends back home. Tommy, my brother who'd been struggling with direction, started using visualization to imagine himself in a stable career. Within 6 months, he'd enrolled in a trade program and was working as an apprentice electrician. My mom, who'd always believed college was for other people, started taking night classes in accounting. "If Sarah can go to Harvard," she told her friends, "I can get my associate's degree." Even my co-workers at the diner started asking about that stuff Sarah's been reading. When I explained the basic principles of the law of attraction, 3 of them enrolled in community college within the year. What I learned from my journey to Harvard isn't just about getting into college. It's about understanding that your thoughts create your reality. Every limitation I'd accepted about myself, every realistic expectation that had been placed on me, was just a story I'd been telling myself about what was possible. The universe doesn't care about your zip code, your GPA, or what guidance counselors say about your potential. It responds to your vibrational alignment with your dreams, your willingness to act as if your goals are already achieved, and your commitment to becoming the person who would naturally live that life. Today, I'm in my second year at Harvard Medical School, specializing in emergency medicine. I want to work in communities like the one I grew up in, showing kids that their circumstances don't define their possibilities. Every morning, I still practice gratitude and visualization, not because I need to manifest anything else, but because I've learned that conscious creation is a way of life, not a destination. That community college chemistry class where I first learned about quantum physics, I go back sometimes to guest lecture about the intersection of science and manifestation. Professor Chen always introduces me the same way. This is Sarah, living proof that when you align your consciousness with your dreams, the universe rearranges itself to make space for your success. The girl who once thought Harvard was impossible is now the woman who teaches others that impossible is just a starting point. Because here's what I know for sure. The universe is listening to every thought you think, every story you tell yourself about what you deserve. And when you decide to change that story, to raise your vibration to match your highest potential instead of your current circumstances, miracles stop being surprising. They start being inevitable. If this story speaks to you, if you're ready to discover your own power to create the impossible, comment below, "I am ready to quantum leap." And if you believe that your dreams are not too big, but that you've been thinking too small, hit that like button, subscribe for more transformation stories, and share this with someone who needs to remember that they are more powerful than they've been taught to believe. Your quantum leap is waiting. The only question is, are you ready to take it?